right, so my name is Lindsey Bird, and I teach at Davis High School. That is a comprehensive high school in the Central Valley, Modesto, California. We have approximately 1,600 students, but I teach in a special program which serves the immigrant and refugee high school population of the entire school district. So each student meeting that category is bused to our location so that we can not just meet their linguistic needs, but we can also levelize them according to their current English level. We can adjust the rigor as it increases and also compensate for possible gaps in their formal education. At this time, our program has served students from 34 countries and 18 native languages. Obviously, due to the nature of our student population, we're enrolling students throughout the entire year. Even the last week of school, we're taking in students that are new to the country. Through trial and error and reflection, I think that I personally am in a good place, and my coworkers are in a good place. And I say that because just as we figure out the needs of that particular student, or maybe a group of students that happens to be new, a new demographic enters. So the way that we've done that is really by addressing the whole child. When the program was designed, I think that the naive assumption was that our biggest challenge would be the language acquisition piece. Obviously, some students come not even being aware of the Roman alphabet. What we grew to realize was that in addition to the linguistic barriers that they had, we were also serving students that had been forced to come to our country through some very dire circumstances. So by meeting the needs of the whole child, we have to, in a culturally sensitive way, identify and address the personal issues that are at the table, and also remediate for gaps in formal education, because we knew that our students would bring with them skills, and they were very intelligent. It was just our job to give them the linguistic ability to express that education. What we didn't realize was how many of our students would come to us without that foundation. In fact, some students had enrolled in our program without ever stepping foot in a classroom in their entire life. And so doing both, remediating for those who have gaps in their education, setting a high bar for those who are rapidly advancing, and analyzing data, which means that we're going to adjust a student's schedule mid-year to ensure that at any given moment that student is challenged. Because if we don't do that, we don't want to focus so much on the students with gaps in their education that we don't set high standards for those who are progressing. But at the same time, we can't ignore the needs of the students with educational gaps, because if we don't fill those gaps, who will? That's our motto. If we don't do it, who will? So we don't only consider ourselves, or myself, a teacher of social science or content, but of education as a whole. I have had the pleasure of working with some teacher credential candidates going through the pipeline at the moment, and my message to them always is, my students are everywhere, and I have the luxury of, when they enroll, knowing who they are and what they bring to the table in terms of their life story. Just because we have this specialized program doesn't mean that every school district does. And so just the overall awareness that at any given time, when a teacher sees something happening in the classroom that could be perceived as a behavior issue, or what we would describe as a negative behavior, is to not just judge the student based on that, but to try to get to know the student and find out the causes. I mentioned before that we feel comfortable meeting the needs of our ever-changing population through trial and error. One example I have of that is a student who we considered a behavior problem, quite frankly. We're taking steps to removing him from the classroom. He really wore his emotions on his shoulder. He seemed to be temperamental. He seemed to be defiant. And as we gave him the English to express his experience, we found out that he'd seen half of his family killed in front of him when a car bomb exploded on the streets of Baghdad. And he wore that on his sleeve every day he was in our classroom. And even though just us knowing that didn't mean that his behaviors changed, what it did was it changed the filter in which we dealt with him. And so just having that piece of information changed how we were able to educate him, and we were able to meet his needs, and he did graduate. So that's just one extreme example of how getting to know the child and addressing the whole child, not just the content area, really is the difference between, in my opinion, a teacher and an educator. And that's what I hope to be for my students, is an educator of everything that they bring with them from their life experience, and then also a facilitator of opportunity for what they're going to experience after they leave my classroom.